The major problem with INTPs comes at execution levels, something that an ESTJ or an ISTJ can do on a routine basis, that is to just follow their plan and their systematic method. INTPs would just overthink or, slightly tweak their strategy every time they get a chance, every time they are curious or they feel the dopamine of novelty, they'll just slightly tweak their strategy and forget about executing ruthlessly every day. They will just overthink sometimes. They will hesitate to make an entry sometimes, do some impulse trades when they are not in the right mindset. The biggest problem is that they don't build rules for themselves because they think they can act in the moment. Like they're good with their brain, they're in control. An INTP would only understand the difference when they have an account that is actually important or valuable to them. Then, when they're trying to make this decision on demand, that is when they'll understand, okay, it's not that easy. Psychology, your primitive brain is a different beast. An INTP would understand that only when there are stakes involved. That is when you understand, okay, you have to build rules. Rules are necessary. But most INTP personality types who are traders, they won't build rules. They think they can manage on their own, but that's the biggest problem. When they know about that issue, they will focus on improving that, or they will try to understand more. Why is that my problem? Like, why is maintaining rules and following it consistently my issue? Why am I trying to be so much discretionary, which is actually not going to help me because what I think I can do is not something that I'm actually going to do in the markets when there are things at stake. And actually, MBTI helped me to arrive at that conclusion. That was a huge insight for me when I actually understood that as one of my weaknesses. In the meantime, if you take another personality type like an ISTJ or an ESTJ, they'll be really good at executing ruthlessly, repetitively, whatever strategy that they have. But their issue would be just sticking on one particular strategy. So each type has their own positives and negatives, and this can actually help you in your trading. What drives an INTP is their top function, which is introverted thinking. It's called TI. Once you understand what introverted thinking is, if you're an INTP, it opens huge doors to your personal life. I wouldn't say trading because this is something deeper than that. Introverted thinking is the mind's habit of internally building a precise model of how things work, not a surface level model, an elegant, compressed set of rules that explains why something behaves the way it does. Think of it like maintaining a private operating system in your head. Every piece of information is tested, debugged, and stripped down until it fits the internal architecture. Now you take that out of there and compare it to trading. What would happen if you apply that same mind to trading? What would an INTP do with trading? They will try to internally build a precise model of how trading world works. Now the only problem is it is insanely difficult to build a precise model of trading. Why? Because it involves human psychology, and human psychology is messy. It's irrational. It doesn't follow rules. INTPs build models based on rules and axioms and stuff like that. With human mind and psychology, you cannot do that. So when they try to build the same model on trading, it's extremely difficult. And what can help you to build a model that is at least close to the reality of trading? MBTI. It's a probable model of human psychology. There you go. So it's like MBTI will help you to build a model of trading, but not so precise like the other precise things like mathematics, for example, but a probable model. Core instinct of TI is TI asks one question again and again. Does this actually make sense when I strip away assumptions? So imagine you take the markets, you strip away all the noise, everything that doesn't make sense to you. What do you have with? You have the core mechanism behind how markets work. Markets driven by liquidity and liquidity alone. A TI mind keeps slicing until all that's left is the clean skeleton of truth. No fluff, no tradition, no this is how we do it. No social compliance. That's why INTPs and ISTPs often explain things with surgical clarity. Yeah, that's some flattery there. That's okay. If you go to the MBTI website or the 16personalities.com, you'll see things like I stands for introversion, N for intuition, T for thinking, and P for perceiving or prospecting. But if you look at it deep, you'll see that it's governed by these functions. So INTP personalities would be driven by this subjective logic function first, introverted thinking. Next is extroverted intuition. What is extroverted intuition? It's the ability to simulate multiple possibilities in your mind. Imagine something that's starting from one core idea and branching into multiple things. That is what extroverted intuition is. NE gives you multiple possibilities or perspectives, and TI ruthlessly filters these possibilities because TI has to make sure whatever NE brings in is actually in line with your internal model, your coherent reality inside you. So imagine that synergy or harmony between TI and NE. NE with a lot of ideas, TI with sharp and ruthless precision. So that's a great combo for you to identify what is working in the markets. But NE can go into overdrive, just going behind a lot of novelty and ideas instead of executing in the markets. When you look at, let's say, an execution heavy person, they have another function which executes very well. Here, what you have is just an idea generation tool and the one that filters that idea based on logic. Not necessary that you execute this heavily in the market, and that is going to be a big problem. I think it's very interesting, and I think everybody who is into trading, but to be honest, not just trading, I think everybody should be reading about MBTI, and MBTI should not be discarded as some mystical, predictive myth or hoax, and people should seriously research into its possibility.